Welcome to the Total Soccer Show. I am Taylor Rockwell, filling in for your normal host, Daryl Grove, which means I guess no one is filling in for me. I've just moved into a different chair. Luckily for you all, that doesn't mean I'm just going to be talking back and forth to myself the entire time. Instead, I've called up the Athletic's Felipe Cardenas. He's going to be talking about Atlanta United, giving us a view into the background of the club, what went into this season, how they were able to make it all the way to MLS Cup and ultimately win the title. But then also looking ahead to what happens when Tata Martino leaves, or now that he has left, what happens with the Miguel Almiron and Pity Martinez coming in. Andrew Carlton gets a conversation in there. The Ezequiel Barco drama from the summer also brought up. We cover a wide range of topics. I did want to note here that if maybe you really don't like Atlanta United, the first half is a lot about the kind of culture and foundation of the club. But we do get into a lot more about like what kind of goes into founding a champions team and about how you go about assembling the pieces to make something work. So if you are, say, a fan of FC Cincinnati, you might want to know about how Atlanta went about doing it. If you're a fan of a lot of other franchises in the league, you probably also have similar interests. So it's a very interesting conversation, I have to say, because Felipe is a very interesting individual. We're very lucky to have him on. So I will stop rambling and we'll get to it. Joining me now, I've got Mr. Felipe Cardenas of The Athletic. Felipe, thank you very much for taking the time. I know it's still celebratory times in Atlanta, so thank you.
Hey, Taylor, what's up, man? Yeah, I think they're going on like day 4, day 5. And, if you just like follow the fans and the culture on Twitter, it's been nonstop. And obviously the trophy has been making some rounds around the city as well.
Yeah, it has. Actually, let's start there. Why don't we? What did you make of that little clip doing the rounds of the MLS Cup was taken to a strip club?
It was taken to Magic City, which I've never been. But I have heard that it's the iconic kind of strip club and gentleman's club, if you will, here in Atlanta.
We're all about formality, so thank you.
Right. Yes, gentleman's club, of course. So a group of players took the trophy to Magic City, and in today's time, someone always has a phone, someone's always recording, so it got on social media pretty quick.
Yeah, 2 questions there. 1, do they know who some of the players were, or has that been sort of kept under wraps? And 2, how do you think Major League Soccer is going to feel about that one?
I think they know. I think like personally, like I don't know everyone that was there. Like I saw a picture that included, I think I saw Guzan and Lorenowitz and I think Mikey Ambrose, but I don't know if that picture was taken at a hotel before they left or was it within the club? I have no idea, but it's been pretty silent. Like, I don't know, like no one has gotten in trouble from what I know.
All right. That was some good lawyering right there. Like, I know they were in the photo, but I don't know when that photo was taken. Your Honor, this is not conclusive. All right. That's good. I did want to start with, so you have been covering Atlanta for quite some time now. You're also a supporter. Was it difficult to not cheer when Jose Martinez scored in the final?
It was because that's an interesting story. Like I'm not from Atlanta, so I'm like the prime target that Darren Eales always talks about when he talks about like the culture of this club and like why the supporters are so behind this team. Like I am a transplant. Like I moved to Atlanta 8 years ago for something other than soccer, just for work. And my wife and I have settled here. And even MLS has always been kind of like my second league or third league. And I didn't support a team growing up. I just kind of watched it and I was always following the stars, if you will. And so all of a sudden I find myself in an MLS city, and I have kids. Like I have a 6-year-old boy and I'm like, this is awesome. Like I'm going to take him to soccer games, just like my uncles and my dad took me to games in Colombia growing up. That was like my main draw. And I think the fact that I'm not attached to Atlanta sport culture and I'm not attached to a team and I haven't gone through the suffering that all the other fans have gone through and that they're still talking about, like leading up to kickoff to the MLS Cup, they were still talking about the curse. Mm-hmm. Like that to me just didn't mean anything to me. For me, it was like, wow, there is a professional soccer team in this city. And guess what? Their coach is Tata Martino and they're going to be pretty good. So right away, I was fully behind the team. Then Paul Tenorio and George Karashi kind of reached out to me. I had my own blog called the Near Post Run that was just for fun. I was just writing about global soccer for fun. And then I connected with kind of the local community here, the local soccer community here. Dirty South Soccer. I wrote some pieces for them, but I was a guy that was like on the Facebook streams, like Jason Longshore, who now is like the voice of Atlanta United, the godfather of soccer in Atlanta, that, you know, they call him. Like, I was one of those guys that was just like on his Facebook stream talking tactics after games. And all of a sudden, right time, right place. Now I'm covering the team for the Athletic Soccer. So yeah, I've tried to take a serious, like, journalistic and objective view when I cover the team.
How's that working out?
Of course, I want them to win.
Yeah.
Of course, I want them to win.
Well, as long as you're not like cheering for them on national television, the way some folks might choose to do with their teams, then I think you're doing just fine. While doing commentary, that is. So that's kind of your story. When do you think, like, the city as a whole really started to buy into the team? Because I feel like Daryl and I were there for All-Star Game this past summer, and it seemed like everybody was kind of on board with the team. It didn't really matter who you talked to. Everybody was either was like aware of what the team was doing, or how good the team was, or had been to a game, or had watched a game. So it did feel like the city had bought in. Do you think that's the case? And if so, when do you think that started to happen?
Yeah, I think what's fascinating about Atlanta United is before they scored a goal, before they were even, we knew who their players were and where they came from. They were a brand. They were, and now they're a much bigger brand. But I think that's how they started off. And one of the key things when a brand engagement is reaching out to the public, resonating with several different demographics across the city, a city that I've been here 8 years, and it is a young city. It's a young city, multicultural, educated, but also just fanatical about wanting to attach to something great. And when I say educated, I mean they know what's good. They know a good product when they see one. This is a city that is home to so many big brands and corporations, global brands. And so I think what Atlanta United did really well is that they came out right away and they looked like a big brand, and they were out in the streets and they were doing grassroots movements. And this was all before anyone knew who Tito Villalba was. And I think I remember when they did like the kit launch, and kind of like the logo reveal and like all those types of activations. I was always surprised that they were filling up wherever they were. They would go to the Tabernacle, which is a pretty awesome venue here for concerts. They just filled that up just to reveal the kit. The supporters groups who have been here long before Atlanta United was a club. They were out just like in arms. They were recruiting people at different types of events. There's a small event here called SoccerCon, kind of like Comic-Con, like nothing like Comic-Con though, but
you don't like cosplay as Joseph Martinez or anything?
No, but that is definitely the future. I think that's the future of that event. But I went with my son before I was covering the team, because I just thought that they're going to be kind of like great events for kids, and then kind of like small-sided soccer games, and I was like, yeah, let's go. And so there I met a lot of the supporters groups. That's where I met our good friend Jay Riddle. And Jay Riddle, before he was this, Atlanta United influencer, if you will, he was just another guy that was kind of going to these events and meeting people. And I think that's where it started. And that's where people started, like the fans started to connect with each other. And then it led up to this, it kind of like built up to the first match at Bobby Dodd Stadium, on March 5th, 2017. And all of a sudden people were there, like they had just been amped, and I remember being there, with my wife and thinking, like, watching the team warm up, and I was excited I was going to see a team coached by Tata Martino. That to me was my biggest, that was the reason why I was there, really. And as soon as I saw them play, I just knew they were going to be good. You could just tell. You could tell that, based on where MLS was just 2 seasons ago and where it's going, you could tell that this team was going to be one of the best teams, if not the best team in MLS in a very short period of time.
Well, let's talk about that then. Like this season in particular, were there any moments that stand out to you as kind of like crystallizing moments of, oh, this team's going to go deep, oh, this team's going to be very good, maybe they'll win the title? Like, were there any specific games or just like the acquisition of any particular players?
I'm one of those guys that, throughout the season, I had my doubts. I really did. Only because I felt that winning MLS Cup was very difficult. And there's a history of good teams
Are you saying it's
being
easy
eliminated.
Now? You're like, oh, we've done it. It's no big deal. Whatever.
Yeah, no. Yeah, Atlanta made it look much easier, but I mean, we can get to that, in a few minutes but I felt like there was a sense that, maybe they won't do it. Maybe they'll be the story that they just didn't get it done. But regardless, it's a success story. That was a narrative, going into the playoffs, and one that I was thinking about. Like what happens if they lose the final? What happens if they lose in the Eastern Conference final? Is it a failure? Like all those types of questions. And leading into the playoffs, like once they had beaten the New York Red Bulls, I spoke with Joseph Martinez and I asked him, how do you guys top this? And it's specifically him, because of just individually his performance was, record breaking. And something that he told me was like, he said, no matter what happens, we might win, we might not, but no matter what happens, nothing will ever be like this season. It's a special season, a special group. He made it known that they can win it all. They could win the Club World Cup or whatever it may be, and this season will stand out as one of the most special seasons for them. And when I hung up the phone with him, I was like, these guys are going to win. Like they want to win. Like they are committed to winning this. And I think when we saw them in the playoffs, they looked like a team that knew they could do it, because throughout the season they had performances even at home. Everyone's talking like, oh, the 73,000. They had a few performances at home where they didn't show up. They might get the result. They might have won 2-1. I think it was RSL was a good win. There were a couple wins where they even played nervous in front of that environment, and they weren't sharp. But I saw a team in the playoffs that was ready for the moment, and I remember like in the press box before the game, talking to Kevin Egan, and that's what I told him. I'm like, this team feels like a team that wants to be out here today, not one that's, oh gosh, we need to perform in front of our home fans. Like they really wanted to be out there, and I think they knew they were going to win that game.
That's really interesting, because I feel like losing the supporter shield the way it went down, it did feel like something that a lot of people kind of made jokes at Atlanta's expense, and it felt like that might be a moment that sort of comes back to haunt Atlanta. Instead, I've been thinking about it, and I feel like there's a chance that losing the supporter shield might have been like a blessing almost, or been very important in you all winning, because I feel like if it goes the other way around, you don't host that first leg. And I think in that first leg, Chris Armas overthought. I think he went a little too cautious, a little too standoffish, and I really think kind of gave all of the attacking momentum to Atlanta. If it goes the other way around, I don't know if that's quite the way that works out for them. So I almost wonder if maybe that was the kind of loss that they needed heading into the playoffs to kind of remind them what they were working for, but also set them up, I guess, karmically to be in a good position to get to the final.
Absolutely. Leading up to the final and even after the game, like champagne, cheap beer, drenched players were still talking about the Toronto loss. And so in different types of ways, I think Parkhurst was asked about it, and, Parkhurst always is, he's the captain. He speaks like a captain. He's very eloquent kind of in that like post game type of reaction. And how important it was to kind of look at each other and like have that come to Jesus moment after the Toronto match. But in the locker room, I ran into Leandro Gonzalez Pires, and it was funny. I tweeted this, like I ran into him and he hugged me like I had scored the winning goal. Like he was that excited, and I was like how does it feel? Like you're a champion. You came here and you're a champion. And he told me like he went to that place as well. He went to the fact that they came into the season like they had an objective, which was to win MLS Cup. But the supporter shield was very important to them. And he told me that when they lost in Toronto, that they wasted all the work. It was a waste. Like all the work that they had done, they completely wasted it. And it was a big blow, but apparently it came at the right time, and it really woke them up. And I think it was twofold, because it also, it forced Tata Martino, the stubborn Bielsa disciple that he is, to reapproach the playoffs tactically. And that was big. That was one of the biggest, I guess, revelations of what this team did in shoring up their defense, but at the same time never losing the attacking identity that's really part of this club's DNA.
Was there one clear adjustment that you saw between regular season and playoffs that you think made the difference?
Yeah, I think obviously, they've tried the 3-5-2 throughout the season. I remember when I talked to Jeff Lorenowitz in September, like he pretty much told me how the 3-5-2 was born at Atlanta United, and it was something that happened at the very end of their first season. So they weren't in a 3-5-2 ever in 2017. But obviously, Tata Martino was starting to see like we need to play like that. I think he felt like maybe he had the personnel to play with width, to attack down the flanks, and he had the center backs, or at least two. He had two center backs that he knew could play technically on the ball, build play from the back, and were very accurate passers in LGP and Parkey. But he needed one more, and he chose Lorenowitz, a midfielder. But we know Lorenowitz is good. We know he's very good on the ball. He's smart. And so he told me about that evolution of the team in the offseason, beginning to run and practice a 3-5-2, something that no one had ever done before. And not just like, I've never played in a 3-5-2. They had never done it the Tata Martino way, where he's asking his center backs to get in the box. And he's asking his fullbacks to always be in the box. And so for them, that was an adjustment as defenders. And I think they slowly, gradually were building momentum in that formation to the point where they were comfortable in both a 3-5-2 and a 5-3-2. And then it just became, right before the NYCFC series, Tata Martino, that's when he said that we made a decision to not concede any more goals. That's when they decided to move Franco Escobar, a center back. He came through the Newell's Academy as a center back. They moved him out wide. They pushed Gressel inside in central midfield, and he played much like an 8, which was a position that Gressel told me early in the season that isn't his favorite, that he has to adjust to the speed of the game in the middle. And so then once Garza came back, I felt like it just all came together. Like he had his 2 wide fullbacks and wingbacks that can, if they need to defend, they can tuck in and play with 5 in the back. But really, it's a formation that puts so much pressure on the opposition. And that's, to me, that's what I take away from this playoff run, is that a lot of people want to say, and I wrote about it, yes, defense ultimately won them the championship, but Tata Martino didn't just sit back. Like he still put so much pressure on the opposition. And that's really difficult for a coach, an opposing coach, and an opposing player to know, no matter what we do, they're going to come right at us.
Hey, everybody, this is Taylor cutting in. We'll get back to my conversation with Felipe in just a moment. But first, I wanted to let you know about today's sponsor, SeatGeek. That's right. Getting tickets online can be far too complicated with hundreds of sites and varying levels of reliability. It's hard to know who to trust. That's why SeatGeek is the way to go. They search multiple ticket sites and grade every ticket based on value, so they help you immediately identify the best seats that fit your budget. If you're a Major League Soccer fan, the season is obviously over. Maybe you want to catch some other sports. Say you've been neglecting your NFL franchise. For me, that would be the Washington Professional Football Team. They are atrocious, which means tickets are available. You can find those on SeatGeek. I think they're playing away at Jacksonville. Tickets are around like $20, $25. So that's always nice, but you can always make sure that those tickets are legit. Every purchase is fully guaranteed, so you can shop for tickets on SeatGeek with confidence, which is a very nice thing. You never want to be relying on what appear to be printed out tickets that might not necessarily be legitimate. SeatGeek has your back there as well. Best of all, our listeners can get $10 off with their first SeatGeek purchase. Just download the SeatGeek app and enter the promo code TSS today. That's SEATGEEK, promo code TSS for $10 off your first SeatGeek purchase. SeatGeek, life's an event. We have the tickets. Thank you to SeatGeek for sponsoring today's episode. Now back to my chat with Felipe. Have you had any conversations with people about how he got everybody, not necessarily got everybody to buy in, but like you mentioned Parkey, for people who aren't Atlanta beat reporters and or fans, that'd be Michael Parkhurst. That's a guy who was like, traded, transferred, sold, whatever it is in Major League Soccer, by the crew. And it's a guy who, got limited looks for the U.S. national team, was never the kind of first player on people's minds. And I think there were people this weekend, myself and Daryl included, who were sort of like, why hasn't he been playing for the U.S. forever? And it seems like the answer is because he hasn't played for Tata Martino until now. And I apologize if people think like we're giving way too much credit to Atlanta and Tata, but it is the case that it's a guy who really, like, being there watching him play, really locked down that defense and caused massive problems for Portland. And I kind of can't figure out how he was able to make that next step aside from Tata Martino working with him every single day.
Yeah. Again, even over the weekend in the MLS Cup, I had, like, for me, the best part was just meeting other writers and journalists, people that I respect so much that I've been reading for so long. And we with Ivis Galarcep, we had a nice moment where he was like, he showed me, we're like, let's connect, like, give me your number. And I was like, all right, here's my number, here's your number. And then he showed me later on, he showed me, he's like, I created your contact in my phone. And when he showed it to me, it was my number and a picture of Tata. And he was like, you're always talking like you're like Tata's number one fan. And I was like, listen, Tata has, not everything he has done in Atlanta has been perfect. Okay. Like, and I've even written about that. Like, I think some of just the way they trained, I think that a lot of the players were getting hurt at the end of the season. And I questioned Tata's staff about like how they're preparing this team in a 34-game season, considering the way like that they play, like this like full throttle like attack, full tilt way for 90 minutes. And I've seen the glimpses of training that we're able to see as journalists. Like, they go really hard. Like, they train really hard. And so, like, I question that. Like, does his staff know? Are they used to this kind of the grind of MLS? Are they burning out their players? So, but at the same time, I noticed that speaking to Tata in post game, it was a privilege. He's a soccer mind that anyone should have. If you have the opportunity to talk to him about tactics or history or anything, like, he'll talk to you. And so I do think that he deserves a lot of the credit, and he will be missed because he has a way of motivating players and getting them to buy in. And it's not easy. It's not easy to tell, a veteran like Parkhurst that now you're going to play a way that you've never played before. And it'll be now the onus is on every single defender that's back there. Like, you're going to be receiving the ball from your goalkeeper, under pressure, no matter what, from every goal kick. And we're going to do it until we do it right. And so that was repetition, under pressure. And he was able to motivate them and get them to understand his philosophy. And then he brought in specific players that are used to that. So LGP, Leandro Gonzalez Pires, a former River Plate star, not a star, an academy product. But he is one of the few players that apparently, this is what we are told, that Tata Martino handpicked. He didn't necessarily handpick all these stars. Some of them were, Paul McDonough and Carlos Bocanegra and Darren Neal doing the dirty work, and then Tata Martino kind of signing off. But from what we're told, Gonzalez Pires is a guy that Martino chose, handpicked, because he's the type of defender that can play with the ball at his feet. He can attack. He's smart. He'll understand this style of play that Tata was going to instill and implement in Atlanta. So I think that rubbed off on players like Michael Parkhurst, who was already a very good defender and obviously very good with the ball at his feet. So he's a smart guy, and I think when you have that, like Lorenowitz, another high IQ soccer player, when you get those kind of skill sets and experiences to mix, you're going to have a good team.
From what you've seen and heard, Felipe, like, what is his approach then to locker room management? We've talked a little bit about tactics and kind of like how he coaches the players. I asked this because when we were there in the summer, again, going back to the All-Star game, there was a lot of talk about Ezequiel Barco, his suspension, the kind of locker room issues that he had created or brought to the team. And it seems like that should have had a way bigger impact. And instead, it has felt, at least to an outsider, like Atlanta has had a pretty united, pretty positive dressing room in a way that you wouldn't expect them to have had. So, like, how did that kind of issue get dealt with, and how involved was Tata in dealing with it?
I'm glad you asked, because I was thinking about this literally 24 hours ago, and what, other than the tactics, how will Tata Martino be missed? Like, what's the toughest part of his personality or just his approach to the team that's the hardest to replace? And I think that man management is that piece. That for me is what will define the 2019 season, like who this next manager is going to be, and is he able to manage these personalities the way that Tata was? So the way that Tata was able to. So if you start with a guy like Joseph Martinez, like the star of the league now, a star in this hemisphere and a big personality in that locker room, at times a difficult personality to manage. And this is just what I saw sometimes post-game or pre-game. Sometimes he wouldn't want to talk to any reporters, very just like in his own world and just not outgoing. And then other days he's very outgoing. And you can see sometimes when Tata brings him off, once he gets to the bench, he's never happy. So, Tata told a group of reporters, and it was with a question that I asked him over the summer, can you describe Joseph's personality? And Tata referred to their relationship as very similar to like father-son, and how he understands, like he knows when to get close and talk to Joseph. He knows when to give him his space. And obviously that's been a great way to manage a player like Joseph Martinez. And then Tito Villalba, who, a great first year, a former DP, a Copa Libertadores champion with San Lorenzo, and a guy that, when he wants, he can take over a game in Major League Soccer. Lots of injuries this year. And, going back to what I talked about, like just about fitness, like he was one of the guys that used collateral damage and however they train their teams. He finally got, I think he was just finally burned out. He's one of the players that goes the hardest in any time he's on the field, and he had a lot of injuries. And I talked to him post game after MLS Cup, and he referred to Tata. He gave all the credit to Tata for keeping him, up, and keeping him positive throughout the season, throughout his ups and downs. He called Tata his psychologist. He told me that Tata was the guy that was always there, encouraging him, telling him like, if you can just give me 10, 15, 20, that's all I need from you. And you're going to be important to this team. And so, that's what I think people miss, and forget when a manager like Tata Martino, who they'll just look at the trophies and they'll look at the tactics. They forget that he was a manager that understood the player because he's been a player. He played over 500 games for Newell's. He's played in every, big match, in South America. And he put himself in their shoes at all times. And that was invaluable. And I think it'll go down as one of the things that the players themselves will miss most about Tata Martino.
So then he sounds pretty hands-on. Does that mean he just took Barco's phone? Is that basically how he dealt with that?
Probably. Barco, that is a good point, though. That was a big deal. That happened at a time where it could have derailed the season. Like, you mismanaged that, and all of a sudden you have a divided locker room. And we don't know. Maybe the locker room was somewhat divided, and it was awkward. But whatever happened, they were able to manage it. And I'm sure Tata had a lot to do with it in saying, in suspending a player that, when he arrived in Atlanta, he looked like the next star. You don't touch stars. You don't suspend stars. They don't get in trouble. They don't, they get a pass, or you just don't know what they've done. And his was very public. And he paid the price. And I think Barco's story is one where he'll have to look back at the season and kind of overcome this as well. But Tata I think he did the job that he had to do and kind of laying down the law. I think everyone saw that it doesn't matter, what's in your bank account. The team is bigger than any individual.
All right. Well, then I want to talk about what comes next for the team in a second. But first, assuming Tata Martino, or if and when he takes over El Tri, what do you expect of him if and when he goes there? Do you expect him to sort of keep this style? Will he adjust it a little bit? And how well do you think he's going to work if he does end up getting that job?
I mean, my gut tells me that he's going to do very well, and it's just because a lot of factors. One, he's a good coach, right? He's a good manager. He's a tactician. Not like the European like hot manager tacticians like a Pep Guardiola. He's not that type of tactician because he has a system and a philosophy, but he's very prepared. He's like somewhat over prepared. I wrote that in the last piece, post game, post MLS Cup, that I've heard from current players and former players that the video and the film sessions are, peak Martino. They are long, they're extremely detailed, but very effective. And he not only studies what his team is doing, so he'll have film of what Atlanta United, and he'll point out this is what we did well, this is what we did, this is what we need to improve. But he'll just like pluck game footage from La Liga, Bundesliga, Ligue 1, like from everywhere, and just queue up different types of moments in games or different types of tactics that his players can relate to. So he's a soccer guy. He's a soccer guy that really loves that part of the game, and I think players appreciate that. I think today's player appreciates that side of the game of being over prepared. And playing to your particular strengths. And that's what I think he does well. And obviously Mexico, they have a very good generation. They have a good team in place. And I think all they need is direction. And I don't know if he'll just show up and say, we're going to do, my preferred 4-3-2-1 or a 5-3-2. But I think he'll put players, he'll realize right away the players that he has, where they can be effective, where they can unbalance opponents. And he'll study Central America like it's nobody's business, and he'll get that team ready to play.
Do you think he would have been a good manager for the U.S. national team? I mean, I know you think he's a good manager, obviously, but like some of what you're saying, it makes it sound like I guess, or it makes me think that maybe he is kind of uniquely suited to honestly managing in Spanish. It feels like he's very good at managing Spanish language players. Not to say that he's not good at managing English language players, but like being able to be the Martinez whisperer seems like a pretty good skill. And it seems like something that he maybe will be adept at with Mexico. Do you think that would have translated to the U.S. national team?
First of all, I agree with you. I think there's a cultural piece to this, and language is important. I think the narrative that U.S. Soccer put out there, maybe unintentionally, that the next manager had to speak English. I think that got misinterpreted. I think what was really important now for Ernie Stewart was to be able to talk to his coach whenever he needed to. Like he's going to be a very hands-on general manager. And when I say hands-on, I mean like extremely hands-on. If you look at his history as a technical director in Holland, that's what he did. He chose the manager that he felt could fit his philosophy and his system. He was very, they worked together. They scouted players together. They probably were up late together and had coffee together. And like all those things are very important to Ernie Stewart. And if you can't communicate, or if you need an interpreter to be there while you're having these, last minute conversations, maybe that's something that they just didn't feel like was going to be a right fit for U.S. soccer. And so tactically, yes, I think Tata Martino would have been a nice fit, but maybe within the culture of just U.S. soccer, maybe it just wasn't the right time for him. But he proved in like that short, all-star game weekend where, he took a group of players that he didn't know, and granted, they weren't all American, but they were unknown to him really until maybe just he probably knew of Tyler Adams, obviously, because he faced him and Carlos Vela, but he was able to just like work in like a mini camp, if you will, and get them ready to play with against the top opponent. Juventus obviously isn't the Cristiano Ronaldo Juventus that we're watching right now, but they were a solid team, and Martino got a group of guys to play well, in kind of in a spotlight moment, and tactically play well. Tactically, they were very disciplined, and so those are things that the U.S. just hasn't had in a very long time, like a true system, a philosophy, and an identity and style of play that players can relate to, and just as soon as they're on the field, they get it. But he can't fix everything. And obviously we know that U.S. soccer wants to create an identity and a style of play from youth all the way up to the senior team, and that's going to take years and years and years. But if they wanted a manager to help them win Gold Cup or get them qualified for the next World Cup, I absolutely think Tata Martino could have done that.
Hey everybody, it's Taylor again, jumping in one more time to tell you about today's sponsor, The Athletic. The Athletic, if you don't know, is a subscription-based sports website covering professional and college teams all over the place. We've had Paul Tenorio on, he writes for The Athletic. We have now had Felipe Cardenas on, Ryan Bailey. Lots of other TSS favorites are writing for The Athletic, and they're doing an amazing job. Some content you can check out there. Lots of coverage about Atlanta, obviously from Felipe. Paul Tenorio wrote a good piece there as well. Caitlin Murray wrote a great article about the U.S. women's national team drawing Sweden and about their group as a whole, making it the point that maybe Daryl and I looked past Chile a little bit too easily because they've got some talent there, but also she does a great job of going through the kind of abbreviated history of the USA playing Sweden, and it kind of goes back and forth, but I would say I'm a little bit more wary of Sweden than I was yesterday. That's for darn sure. There's also breaking news and some hard-hitting pieces to be found at The Athletic. For example, a great piece by Jeff Reuter. He's writing about USL labor negotiations, specifically the influence of Steve Gans, the former presidential candidate, the work he's doing to try to get some better deals for the USL players. Daryl and I have talked about them many times on the show, but all the kind of tribulations they're facing, the shortcomings in pay, the shortcomings in housing, health insurance, all of those issues. It sounds like Steve Gans doing what he can to help out there. Hopefully that works out better, and if it does, I'm sure you'll hear about it on The Athletic, and if it doesn't, you'll probably also read about it on The Athletic. That all makes sense. Best of all, you can get 40% off your annual subscription by going to theathletic.com/TSSDecember. Daryl's not here, and I'm not very good at coming up with puns on the fly, so I'll just repeat one more time. That's theathletic.com/TSSDecember for 40% off your annual subscription. Thank you very much to the fine folks over at The Athletic for sponsoring today's episode of the Total Soccer Show. We obviously very much appreciate it. And with that in mind, I wanted to add that today's advertiser is separate from today's interview. There is no correlation between the two. Felipe is here because we really like Felipe and the work he's doing, and also we just really like Felipe. He's a wonderful fella with lots of knowledge. So with that in mind, let's get back to our conversation with Felipe. So it seems like Tata will be heading to El Tri. The U.S. obviously has Greg Berhalter. Atlanta has no coach. So what's the latest there? Because obviously there's some pretty big shoes to fill with Martino departing. Who do you think they're looking at right now? Have they narrowed down that list? And who would you like to see them looking at, or who would you like to see get that gig?
So I'm not sure when, maybe a month ago, and I'm going to retweet this eventually, but I wrote a piece on who, for the Athletic Soccer, who is Daryl Niels and Atlanta United? Who are the candidates that they'll look to? Mm-hmm. So because the manager hasn't been named, I think that piece still has some legs and it's still relevant because really the candidates that everyone seemingly is talking about are still available. So that is Guillermo Barros Escalotto, who's the Boca Juniors manager, and let's start with him quickly. Just first of all, we know, and this was coming out of the loss against River Plate. Newspapers in Argentina now are essentially, they all agree that he's done at Boca Juniors. His contract finishes at the end of this month, so December 31st is the last day of his contract. They don't expect him back. Apparently, the board and kind of like the board of directors and the suits at Boca Juniors want to kind of change things and change directions. And he was hammered a bit. Like he always had a strong team because Boca Juniors was spending a lot of money on players. But they didn't always perform. They didn't win everything. They kind of underachieved in Boca's lofty standards. So he had he was somewhat embattled at times, but he got them to the final of Copa Libertadores, which is a big deal. And they just ran up against a very good River Plate team who is managed by quite possibly the hottest manager in South America right now, which is Marcelo Gallardo. So right away, those are two, coincidentally, the two rivals in Argentina could potentially be candidates for Atlanta United. I don't think it's going to be Gallardo. I think he would be my pick because he is very much becoming this budding superstar tactician. And I think he is very well one of those managers that understands the pressure that players go through. He was a very good pro at River Plate, played in Europe, played in Major League Soccer, but his players look like that they will run through brick walls for him. They will do anything for him to get the result, and they play just free flowing. They're very attack oriented. He does a great job of getting them to play fearless soccer in any stadium, and always kind of feeling like they're the favorites. So he would be a nice fit. I think everyone would be happy with him. But I think Barros Escalotto, they have a previous relationship. He was, Carlos Bocanegra, Darren Eales, Atlanta United reached out to him before Tata Martino became the manager, of the club. So there's a previous relationship there. And, Barros Escalotto has been open. Him and his brother, his twin brother, have been very adamant about wanting to come to the United States at some point in their careers and manage in Major League Soccer. So it's setting up for that to happen. But Darren Eales did say, immediately after Tata Martino made his announcement that he would in fact not be returning or would not return to Atlanta United, Darren Eales said it was going to be a global search, and that would include the United States, it would include Europe. So I wrote about Caleb Porter possibly being an option for Atlanta United. Obviously now looks like he's set to become the next head coach of the LA Galaxy. And so here in the States, there aren't a lot of options. But I think they'll consider, I think this is a group that will interview, whoever they feel can get this team to progress and at the same time keep the momentum going. Like, I personally feel like having a South American manager is a nice fit because of what you said about like being a Joseph Martinez whisperer. Like, you need someone, in my opinion, that can identify with the culture and the makeup of this team. So you have a lot of players from South America that just relate to that understand that right away, that this is a guy that knows where I'm coming from, knows how I play. And that, to me, it looks like Barros Escalotto most likely is going to be the pick for the next manager for Atlanta United.
One thing I'm kind of confused by when it comes to Barros Escalotto is that he has the relationship existing with the Columbus Crew, obviously, who also don't have a manager. And yet I haven't heard him kind of fancied as a candidate for them at all, or not really seriously. And I can't tell if that's because things are in such a state in Columbus right now, or if it's because Atlanta, kind of because of what they've done and who they've gone after in the past, have kind of moved themselves to that next level of that's a gig that a young up-and-coming manager might look at as more of a stepping stone than other possible gigs in Major League Soccer.
Probably. I mean, I think at this point, I think Scalotto, obviously he really wants to leave Argentina. Like, he's not looking to finish his contract at Boca Juniors and then take on another job in Argentina's Superliga. I think he's ready to go. And he, during the telecast, Fox Deportes from Argentina mentioned that he has offers, I guess these are reported offers, so I can't confirm, but that he had offers from Brazil, from two clubs in Brazil, and that he had offers in China and the United States, or at least that links offers in Brazil, links in the United States and China. So Barros Escalotto, no matter what, is leaving Argentina. And who knows, like, I'm sure if the Columbus Crew made a big push for him, he would consider it. He's an icon at that club. Yeah. He won everything with them, and that seems like a logical landing place for him. But
wait, are you saying to me that money dictates decisions in soccer?
Lately, yes, right? Atlanta United proved that winning, money is everything. But no, I think he'll look at Columbus. He'll see that as something. If the Atlanta deal, let's say it falls through and that's still open, like, who knows? Maybe they reach out to him. But at this point, we have to be honest here. Atlanta United is the premier job right now in Major League Soccer. He's coming from. Barros Escalotto is coming from a huge club in not only in South America, but just globally. Boca Juniors is just a humongous, gigantic, super club. And it makes sense for him for the next challenge to be, taking on this new club, but one that's setting up to be, as Alexi Lalas said, the first, MLS super club. So, I think he would want that challenge. Honestly, I'm one of those guys that's like, until I see the player or the coach holding the jersey, it's like, you don't know what can happen. But he looks like the favorite right now.
All right, and when he comes in, when he comes in, he will have to do some figuring out, because it does look like Miguel Almiron is likely to depart. I think the reports, which maybe came out of his camp today, were saying that he'll be sold to Newcastle for a record fee for a Paraguayan player. Whether or not that's true, it seems like Pity Martinez is already confirmed, as he said this weekend. I was talking with Eric Quintana from Mouths of the South, and he was saying that maybe Martinez is actually a different player. I just had this idea, because I'm not as familiar with Argentine soccer, I had this idea that it was like, Pity Martinez, Miguel Almiron, it's like for like replacement. You kind of keep going with what's been working. And Eric's point was that they're actually a little bit different, and that Martinez is more in the Barco mold of like maybe slow it down, like kind of figure out what you're trying to do. It's not quite so fast break, let's go, go, go. Would you agree with that? And if so, then what do you think that means for Atlanta next season? Do you think it necessitates a change in approach?
Somewhat. I agree somewhat. Like, he definitely is a very different player. Peter Martinez is a much different player than Miguel Almiron, and that's only because nobody, like, honestly, I don't know who else in the world and I'm not comparing Miguel Almiron with like Cristiano Ronaldo or Lionel Messi or anything like that, but he's so fast. Like, his speed is what sets him apart from so many players, and what makes him so dangerous, and also what allows him to fit into certain types of systems in the English Premier League, which is still a vertical type of soccer league. So Miguel Almiron is very technical, yes, but he's able to, if he sees green space in front of him, he could be in his own half, and if he sees space, because let's say the opposing right fullback is cheating and attacked and they're on a counter, he himself is capable of just running with the ball under control past everybody from midfield and scoring a goal. And like, there just aren't a lot of players that can do that. And so Pity Martinez, first of all, he's a stockier type of build than Miguel Almiron. So if Joseph Martinez's grandfather recently said that Miguel Almiron runs like an ostrich, I can't wait to see what he says about Pity Martinez, who's much smaller, stockier. He has like those Roberto Carlos type of legs that are just all muscle, and he's the one thing that he has in common with Almiron is that he's left-footed as well, and he is fast, but he's quicker than he is fast. And to me, he's the type of player that he can play as a classic 10, but you can also kind of play him along that front three and put him in a wide position, because he's the type of player that he likes to invite pressure. Like, he'll invite a 1v1, and that he's very quick getting by somebody with just like a quick touch with his left foot. So, while Miguel likes to see space in front of him and then take players on, PT is much better in tight spaces. He's unafraid of a 1v1 matchup. Very technical on the ball, great dead ball specialist as well. And to your point, yes, I think it changes a little bit the way they would have to play, because Miguel, he's able to just like break through the lines himself. And if a team is pressuring Atlanta United, sometimes almost unintentionally, he just gets the ball and breaks everything down by himself. PT, while in Argentina they see him as a guy that can get the ball and run past people, it's much different. Like, he does it already in the opponent's third, not from his own half. So I think there could be more like methodical build-up play, possession-based attack if PT is kind of like a focal point. If he's on the ball, he's going to be a guy that gets on the ball, gets his head up, and can combine with other skill players. So it's not a complete 180, but they are totally different players. I just think at this level, if you're good, and if you're at that level of a PT or a Miguel Almiron, if you have other players around you that are very good, you're going to excel. And I think that's the story really of Atlanta United. And if they continue to do this, if they can just bring in good players and have a base of other very good players, they're going to be fine.
I wanted to ask you about one more Atlanta United player. I know you've got places to go, people to talk to, but I wanted to ask you about Andrew Carleton because there's not much being made, but he's a player that I know U.S. fans have a lot of interest in. He was not there for the celebrations. It came out afterwards that he had been suspended, was maybe out partying the night before. What's the latest, and what's his situation looking like heading into the offseason and then the preseason?
Well, it's unfortunate for him. He's an 18-year-old with a lot of promise, and he's a very good player. Like I said before, the few glimpses that the reporters that we get when we get to watch practice, like on a weekly basis, it's not a lot. But there have been times where I show up and I'm in the lobby and I'm watching them train, and I see Andrew Carleton, who I guess the fans want to see him play more. They want to see him out, starting, in big matches, but he's been taking full advantage of just training with this group. And sometimes I see that. I see him in training and he's going hard and he's playing well. He's able to manage the pressure of an Eric Remedi, a player that shut down Maxi Morales and Kaku and Diego Valeri and Sebastian Blanco. And I saw, Andrew Carleton just casually getting by him and managing to actually like be aware of different situations under pressure, ball at his feet, back to goal. And so he's learning, and obviously he's also still learning to be a pro, and what that means and the commitment that it really he's next to these pros that are committed to winning and going to Europe. And apparently he's still also surrounded by his friends, here in Atlanta. And sometimes that's hard to get away from. I can imagine, as an 18-year-old, while he told me when I had to sit down with him early in the season that he wants to be the best player in the U.S. eventually, that he wants to play in a World Cup for his country. He wants to help Atlanta United win, a FIFA Club World Cup. Like his ambitions are clear. And the talent is there, but I think sometimes we forget about his age and that he's still obviously very easily influenced by the people around him. So the latest that I know is that there's not much to know. He wasn't at the parade as well. So when the team finally got to the stadium and there was kind of a stage set and they all came out, from what I read, they announced, they kind of brought every player out, by their number, and he was not called. So the punishment will be harsh for him, considering this is his hometown team. He's a homegrown player, and he missed out on the biggest title in the club's history.
All right. Well, hopefully he gets it together a little bit, has a good, strong preseason. Maybe he gets some minutes next season. If he does, I'm sure you will be writing about it for The Athletic. Felipe, if people want to read more from what you're doing or hear more from you, how can they find you?
Well, follow me on Twitter at Felipe Carr, and because that's where we can connect. And obviously, I'm a soccer guy, so I'm always talking about soccer. That's where I tweet my articles. And what I always say about The Athletic is that it's about the readers. Like everything we do is about them. And so comment, let us know how you feel about the team and their future. But be sure to just follow me on Twitter and let's get connected.
All right. And if you see Felipe in person, make sure you corner him and then talk to him about the CA for like 45 minutes.
Yes, you can do that too.
It was about that long, that conversation, right?
It wasn't only about that, but yeah, we got into we had a deep conversation on Friday night.
That we did. I'm glad that you're still willing to come on the show at least. It means it wasn't that brutal of a conversation. That's good.
It wasn't brutal. Listen, another thing I'll say to all listeners of the Total Soccer Show, which by the way, before I was a guest, I was a listener.
Oh wow.
And what I'll say about Daryl and Taylor is that you always wonder, right? Can these guys play? Can you watch guys on TV and they're talking about soccer, and can these guys really play? Well, to all the listeners, Daryl and Taylor, these guys can play.
I mean, I don't love the order in which you said that, but that's fine. That's fine. I prefer Taylor and Daryl can play, but that's fine. Daryl and Taylor can play. I appreciate that. As can you. It was fun playing on that field. That's a pretty great. Amazing aspect of Atlanta as well. Fields at metro stations or subway stations, I guess.
Yeah, that is unique to the city, and it's been part of this. It's kind of been part of the story, the Atlanta United story. I mean, Soccer in the Streets is the organization that has really brought that to life, but it just happened to really come to life at the same time as Atlanta United really becoming such a big deal in this city. And for someone like me that grew up, I grew up in Indiana, but I was going to Columbia every summer. And in Columbia, like, I rarely played on a nice field, like, it was always in the street, on cement. And that's where the best games were, small-sided and in urban settings, and you're just grabbing people. And that's what the station soccer seems like, it's like in the middle of the city, it's just a small-sided field, chain link goals, and just people that want to play. So yeah, that was awesome.
I agree wholeheartedly. So I need y'all to make and host MLS Cup Final again, so we can make it back and play those games again.
Hopefully.
Yeah. All right. I appreciate it. Well, Felipe, thank you again for taking so much time, and we will talk to you again probably around when the season kicks off.
All right, Taylor. Thank you for having me.